Part 1 of Vamped Away by Xtrole. Note, this is just a casual recording of this story, and there may be reading errors that happen. Chapter 1, Attacked. As the train rolled along, I looked out of the window and saw that there was someone who was being attacked outside of the train. I was almost tempted to try to jump off the train to help the target, but I restrained myself because it seemed likely that I'd get so wounded by jumping that I wouldn't even be any help, and then an injured and helpless me might get attacked too. It angered me, though, that someone was being attacked, and for all I knew, the attacker might murder the person. Why couldn't humans just leave other humans alone and not attack them? But I suppose that it had been that way for pretty much all of recorded human history. There were always some people who found reasons to initiate violence against others. Suddenly, the person who'd been attacking the other person outside of the train was standing in front of me, and he had blood on his face. "Did you just murder that person?" I asked in horror. And the bloody attacker grinned and said, "I'll have you know that I sucked every last drop of blood from that person. Not even a little of it went to waste. That's not murder, it's hunting. It's cannibalism," I said fearfully, and I was worried that I was going to be cannibalized too. "Don't worry," the man said with a scoff. "I'm not going to suck your blood, though I might whisk you away so that you can be a part of my harem." "You didn't deny the cannibalism accusation," I said in hopes that I could get under his skin, "and you do realize that cannibalism warps people's brains, right? Do you want a warped brain?" "I have to eat blood, though," he said, "because I'm a vampire, and vampires are a different species, which would mean that I didn't engage in cannibalism. If you're a different species from me, then why would you want me in your stupid harem?" I said worriedly, and he grinned and said I would turn you into a vampire before we'd engage in any of the fun stuff, and so you'd be the same species as me at that point. "Are you a former human?" I asked, "or were you always a vampire?" "I was always a vampire," he said, "though my father was turned into a vampire by my mother, just like I'm going to turn you into a vampire." I was trying to think of a way out of this, but it seemed pretty bad for me. I knew that I'd rather die than be forced to do fun stuff with this monster or drink the blood of humans. "Your father was clearly evil because he drank the blood of people who were members of the same species that he used to be a part of," I said. "I mean, that's just sick." "Oh," the vampire said with a smirk, "and you think that you wouldn't drink anybody's blood if you were a vampire? Of course you would. The past is the past, and we vampires are very good at letting it go." "Is it only humans that you can suck blood from?" I asked. "I mean, wouldn't it be really weird if the only blood that you could drink was human blood?" "Of course we can drink the blood of other creatures," he said, "but humans taste the best to many of us. Think of it this way. You humans can eat oranges, tomatoes, apples, grapes, pears, bananas, potatoes, and much more. If I were to say, 'Hey, why are you eating apples? You can eat all of those other foods instead,' then humans would look at me like I'm crazy and say that many of them like apples the most, and so why would they stop eating apples?" "Humans didn't used to be apples," I huffed, and the vampire said, "But you share a common ancestor with apples, do you not?" Now you're referencing a theory, and even if the theory is how it actually happened, me sharing a common ancestor with apples would be quite a bit different from me formerly being an apple, I argued, and he said, you know that vampires are more advanced than humans are, if that theory is correct. Survival of the fittest, dear, and you humans ain't the fittest. Don't you want to become the fittest? You would be a fool to not want the gift that I'm going to give you. Raping someone and turning them into another species without their permission isn't a gift, F-face, I said furiously, and if you were actually more advanced than humans, then you'd understand that. That little tirade was actually kinda cute, he said with a laugh, and then he sped over and bit me before I even had a chance to protest again. He then grabbed me and was surely about to whisk me away when suddenly there was another person who I assumed must also be a vampire who was in the train with me. Brother, the vampire said, did you just turn this person? Because you know that we're supposed to get approval from the council before turning people, right? Blah, 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 and it's good to see you too, sister, the vampire said dismissively. I was in shock, and there were tears in my eyes, and the new vampire looked at me with what seemed to be pity and said, I'm sorry about my brother. He can be a real turd sometimes. We're leaving now. And her brother quickly gave me an arrogant look and said, have fun resisting the urge to drain and or turn everyone on this train, sweetheart. And his sister said, enough, she's not our problem now. And her brother said, she's supposed to become a part of my harem though. And his sister said, you broke the rules. No new harem member for you. She's none of our concern now. And she quickly grabbed her brother and whisked the two of them away from the train despite his protests. I was still in shock and in tears, and I was also noticing that some of my teeth had changed shape, and it also felt like some parts of my stomach, bones, throat, etc. had changed somewhat too. I then noticed a craving begin to come into me, and I knew that that craving was for blood. But I already knew that I didn't have to have human blood, and what I needed to do was go live far away from humans and only drink animal blood. I would never consume the blood of the species that I had been before. Never. I wondered if I could do super speed like those siblings had, and so I tried speeding to just a few feet away from me, and it worked. Then I tried speeding off of the train, and it worked. Then I sped and sped and sped until I was deep inside of a forest where I knew there was almost certainly be no humans to be found. And at that point, the craving for blood was so strong that I wasn't inclined to try and resist it, and I wasn't a vegetarian anyway, since I had always eaten meat, like chicken and fish and whatnot, and so I quickly found a coyote, sped next to the poor creature, and quickly drained all of the coyote's blood. Chapter 2. Signs. Draining the coyote's blood managed to get rid of the craving for blood for the time being, but when I turned around to leave the drained coyote behind, I saw a nearby elephant staring at me accusingly, and the elephant said, that coyote was our president and was about to give a speech. You're going to be in big trouble for murdering our president. And I said, I'm sorry, but isn't it normal for creatures to devour other creatures sometimes? No, the elephant said, not in this forest. Didn't you see the signs? Signs? I asked, and then the elephant led me around and showed me signs that said, "No eating each other here. Just ask around, and you'll be directed to where you can get sustenance." And I gulped guiltily and said, "I guess my craving for blood was so strong that I didn't pay attention to the signs, but I really am sorry. I don't even want to be a vampire. Some jerk just turned me into one without my permission." "Ignorance of the rules isn't an excuse," the elephant said, "and so you'll have to follow me over to the vice president's abode so that we can inform her that she's going to become president now and has to give that speech that the coyote you just devoured was about to give." I decided to follow the elephant to the vice president's abode, and we soon reached a lamb who was apparently the vice president, and the elephant said, "Hey, Wooly, this vampire just killed the president, and so you are the president now and have to give that speech." "Oh, that's bad," Wooly cried out. "What do you have to say for yourself, vampire?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I just got forcibly turned, and I didn't see the signs because I was craving blood so much." "Excuses won't bring Koi back, will they?" Wooly huffed. "And if Trunks here hadn't found you, then you might have murdered more people." "I didn't know," I wailed, "and I didn't even realize that vampires could talk in y'all's language, since I could never talk with anybody but humans when I was human, and I don't get this system that you have here either. How is it that carnivores don't need meat around here?" "Well," Wooly said, "I suppose that I can tell you as we walk to the place where I'm going to give that speech that Koi was going to give. Follow me." And so Trunks and I followed Wooly, and Wooly said, "So a few years ago, a bunch of werewolves from outer space showed up here and told us that since vampires were on this planet now, we'd need to expose them as the evil psychos that they are by making it so that the only species on Earth who still consumes other creatures would be the vampires. Then everyone would team up and defeat those bloodsuckers. Since then, werewolves had been regularly supplying everyone in this forest with lots and lots of food and drink alternatives that don't require any creatures to be killed, and so we've all been teaming up together and not consuming any other creatures so that we can follow the excellent plan that the werewolves have." "Are the werewolves going to continue supplying y'all with those alternative foods even after the vampires are vanquished?" I asked. "Or will they just stop delivering them at that point and make it so that carnivores will go back to consuming other creatures?" "We don't know," Wooly admitted, "but for now the vampire threat has to be dealt with, and this is what we're doing." "Can the werewolves at least show you how to make those alternative foods?" I asked, and Trunks said, "Not gonna happen, unfortunately, because the ingredients that they use can only be grown on their planet and wouldn't be able to grow on Earth." "Well," I said, "I actually hate vampires more than any of you do, and so maybe I can help you defeat them. And is there any way for me to turn back into a human? And is there alternative blood for me to drink?" "But you murdered our president," Wooly wailed, but Trunks said, "Maybe she can be useful, though, and can we really blame her for murdering the first creature she saw after being forcibly turned into a vampire? We shouldn't let our desire for revenge prevent us from welcoming a potentially game-changing ally. And yes, creatures like mosquitoes need blood, and so we do have alternative blood." and the werewolves gave us lots more alternative blood than the mosquitoes need, and so maybe they had predicted that we might gain a vampire ally like you. I still don't know, Wooly said. Maybe we should put it up for a vote, and I shrugged and said, that works for me, and Trunks said, very good, and the three of us continued heading towards where Wooly was going to give the speech that Coy had been planning on giving. Chapter 3. Moving. The three of us soon reached the place where the speech was going to be, and Trunks said that she and I should hide out of sight while Wooly gave the speech to the thousands and thousands of creatures who were assembled. I agreed that this made sense, and so Trunks and I hid behind the stage while Wooly began her speech. My fellow creatures, Wooly began, I regret to inform you that the vampires have slain our beloved President Coy, and there were gasps and shouts of fury from the crowd. After the crowd had calmed down a bit, Wooly said it would be tempting to blame the vampire who metaphorically pulled the trigger for this horrific murder, but I'm thinking bigger. I'm thinking about who gave the order, so to speak. See, it turns out that the vampire who murdered Coy had been just a normal human, minding her own business, and then one of those evil vampires forcefully turned her into a bloodthirsty vampire, and Coy happened to be the first person who she encountered while having her thirst for blood. And so avenging Coy's death primarily means doubling down on our mission to destroy the vampires who are the most responsible for his death. And so our efforts to vanquish vampires away from our planet must be increased as much as possible. And loud cheers and war chants began erupting from the crowd at these words. Once the crowd had settled down again, Wooly said, now we have a very strange thing to vote on, and I don't pretend to know what the results of this vote will be. See, the vampire who got vamped against her will into murdering Coy says that she hates vampires more than any of us even do, and she wants to only drink the alternative blood that the werewolves gave us, and she wants to help us defeat the vampires. Now, I know that the idea of working with any vampires at all is not necessarily an easy pill to swallow, and working with the vampire who murdered Coy might seem even crazier, but let's not forget that many of us were carnivores before the werewolves began providing us with our alternative foods, and she did not want to become a vampire, and does want to defeat the vampires. And at those words, some in the crowd cheered, others booed, and others murmured uncertainly. After the crowd had calmed down again, Wooly said, and so I say that we just do the vote now, all in favor of allowing this vampire who hates vampires to work with us. Please go to the west side of the field, and all in favor of not allowing her to work with us, please go to the east side of the field. And I suppose that those who are uncertain can go to the middle of the field. The votes will be counted in 5 minutes. And so the members of the crowd all began moving to either the east side, west side or center of the field, and I prepared to super speed away from everyone if the voting didn't go in favor of working with me, because I had no intention of dying, even though I 100% despised the fact that I was now a vampire. Chapter 4. Enemies. Unfortunately, the vote did not go my way, though to the voters' credit, the vote only went against me by a small number of votes. Well, that sucks, Trunks said sadly to me. I hope that we'll meet again, my friend, but you should get out of here, I think. Thanks, Trunks, I said. I understand that it was a close and controversial vote. Take care of yourself, buddy. And I quickly super speeded away from the stage and crowd as quickly as I could. But now I was in a real pickle. What was I to do? I mean, now I didn't even want to drink animal blood since I could talk with animals, and I didn't know how to get any of that alternative blood that the werewolves had been giving to the creatures in the forest. But then I felt the desire for blood coming upon me, and I groaned unhappily and wondered whether I'd be able to resist it. I was now among some mountains, and I knew that there were plenty of creatures nearby who I could suck blood from, and I needed that blood. Or did I? But I did. Wouldn't a vampire die without blood? Or would a vampire die without blood? I decided to try to resist the urge for blood for as long as I could, and I somehow managed to make it for about one excruciating day, but then noticed that my skin was starting to hurt and bubble up, and the physical pain on my skin was almost unbearable. Damn it! I supposed that I did need blood if I wanted to continue living, but maybe fruit and vegetables would work. I hadn't even thought of to try them during my day of boycotting blood. I quickly found some fruit trees and ate some fruit, but it tasted disgusting and I just vomited it up. Then I found some vegetables and I tried eating them, but it went as badly as the fruit had. Okay, so now it seemed obvious that it really would be literal suicide for me to not drink blood, and I was not the suicidal type, even though I hated being a vampire. And so I decided to just find a creature and drink the creature's blood. I mean, what choice did I have? I super speeded over to a zebra that was nearby and was about to drink the zebra's blood when suddenly a great shadow covered the zebra and I was distracted enough that I looked up at what was causing the shadow for a second. What I saw was a giant spaceship, and then I saw a huge box drop from the ship, and a parachute quickly formed over the huge box, which made it fall fairly slowly. I then noticed that the zebra had run off, and I decided to wait for the huge box to drop before searching for more blood. I mean, maybe the werewolves had taken pity on me somehow and had dropped me some of that alternative blood. Once the huge box reached the ground, I opened it, and it did indeed find that what looked like blood was inside of it, and so I quickly drank up some of the red liquid and found that it tasted really good, and that my skin had rapidly turned back to normal as I'd been drinking it. I had only consumed about 1/100th of the red liquid that was in the huge box, which meant that in theory the red liquid in the box could last me about 100 days. Then I noticed a letter on the outside of the box, and I quickly opened it and began reading what was written on the paper that I found inside of it. The message said, "I am Wolfie the werewolf, and I've been watching you ever since that speech Wooly gave about you, and I've decided that you're sufficiently committed to the cause. Unfortunately, you're unlikely to find other vampires who will settle for alternative blood, because the vampires who moved to your planet were specifically leaving their planet because they were annoyed with the vampires who wanted only alternative blood to be allowed. Many of us werewolves can get along with vampires who are alright with only consuming alternative blood, but vampires who decide to consume real blood are our mortal enemies. The vampires who traveled to your planet thought that they had gone so far away from us werewolves that they would escape from us, but they underestimated us. We will expose the vampires on your planet for the psychos that they are, and only vampires like you, who decide to only drink alternative blood, will survive the war on your planet that is coming. So yeah, here's one shipment of alternative blood for you, and we'll get more to you eventually. Hopefully there will be other vampires like you, because my army of werewolves will not hesitate to battle against and slay all vampires who insist on continuing to drink real blood.